Hello, love.
And you killed it tonight here at Revolution. I am so happy that you're talking to me right now. I am a big fan. I'm going to start that off just like that. When I found out, Motley to me was like Kiss. And when I found out that you were going to be in Motley, I was like, well, I love these guys, so they got to be making a good decision. I went out and bought the Motley record. The Motley record was amazing to the point where I bought tickets for every tour date that you were going to be in New York.
And guess what?
And I mean, the record was just so killer. After that, when you were out of Motley, then I followed you on to Union, and I wanted to go see Union when you came to New York. You know, I have all the Union CDs, and last time I saw you, before tonight, was the acoustic set that you do with Tom Kiefer. Can you explain a little bit what made you do the acoustic storyteller set?
I mean, pretty much every song that I think I've ever written in any of the bands, even the heavier ones, all starts on an acoustic, format.
Right.
And they just called me, and I'd done a few shows with like ESP. We did some stuff acoustic, and they saw it live, or they saw it on YouTube. They just called me, and they're like, "Hey, dude, we're gonna go out." Was that with Cinderella you said, or Tom Kiefer?
With Tom Kiefer.
All right. Well, I did it a year before.
Right.
With Cinderella. And it just kind of started with them just asking me, like, hey, you do this acoustic thing. And it's where when you tour and do shows like this, you're kind of at the mercy of the promoter. Most cases, like, you'll get a really not so good cover band or somebody that opens for you, and like, it's just crazy.
Right.
So Tom didn't want that on the Cinderella tour or his tour.
Right.
So they said, would you come out and do a 30-minute, 40-minute set, whatever? And I'm like, yeah, sure, no worries. And it just kind of went from there. And I had already started recording an acoustic record, so I'm like, oh, this is fucking perfect.
Exactly.
So I'm like, all right, cool. And then I wound up actually, their tour manager, Larry Moran, is actually my manager now. So I played him some of the tracks that we had already started recording, and he was like, oh, this is great stuff, whatever. It just snowballed, whatever. But it was basically Cinderella saying, we don't want some crazy cover band, or, some of these bands are really good, some of them are not so good.
Yeah, it's always tough.
So we want whoever the local guys are going to be, then you, then us. We want you right before us. So it just worked out.
That was cool as shit, because I really enjoyed that, because it's something different. And again, the way those songs are interpreted, when you bring them down to their most basic naked form, people dig it. And, like I said, it definitely gives it a different flavor for everybody to see. Now, moving on a little bit, what do you feel is the new renaissance for the Motley 94 record, the 20-year anniversary, that made you play these songs tonight? Which, believe me, again, I'm totally thrilled that you did.
Well, obviously, we were talking about it earlier, like, you bought tickets for shows that didn't happen. And, if I can be blatantly honest, there was a shit ton of gigs that we didn't do because, if I can be frank, the tour was fucking horrible. I mean, it was good in some spots, and then it was horrible in others. So we just canceled the whole rest of the tour and went home, licked our wounds, and then basically started what became Generation Swine. And I just kind of felt like that record was never kind of really given its due. And I always talk to fans, and they're like, dude, I'm so pissed. I never got to see that fucking tour. I never got to see that tour. I never got to see the tour. So this is actually my manager's idea. I was going to go in and do a new electric record with my guys, and
which I can't wait for, by the way.
He was like, listen, I think Motley's doing their thing. They're not going to play any of that material. So it's the 20th anniversary of that record, which I didn't even realize. He goes, 20th anniversary, you should go out and do some of that material. Or do the record. And I'm like, okay, all right, I thought about it. They started working on it. I was still doing shows up until about a month ago. Acoustically. And we just kind of started rehearsing. I wanted to start it this year because it's the 20th anniversary, but I wasn't sure no, it's not probably. It's going to go into next year. You know what I mean? So
that's fantastic. I got a really deep kind of a question to ask you. When you first heard the Generations One record, how did you feel when you heard your vocals?
No, wait. Yes, no, maybe, and possibly. That's my answer.
Okay, that's fair enough. I'll take it. Well, when I first heard it, I got a bootleg version of a couple of songs back in '97. First song I heard was "Let Us Pray." First time the chorus came up, I was like, "That's fucking John on that record." I was like, "How did they do this?" You know, and I was like, "What the fuck?" You know what I mean? Like, it was totally your voice. I know you know it. I mean, you know what I mean? It's your voice. You know, and. Okay, I'm gonna leave it at that.
Yeah.
That's all I need, but I got it. I totally get it.
Read between the lines.
Yeah, I don't need to because I totally saw that whole big line that you did, no problem.
No, I was honestly, that's kind of, there was a few, don't forget that guitar stand, whoever it belongs to. That was kind of part of my whole lawsuit thing with those guys. Everybody knows, you know, it didn't end on a great note. But,
no, obviously.
You know, there was some weird things that I was a little, you know, I was a little disappointed. You know, I don't care if anybody likes it or not. You know, I thought we were like, for like 5 or 6 years, we were super tight. I hung out with those guys every day of the week. And I don't even know if they know. All I know is when they said they were bringing Vince back, I sat in their manager's office. Maybe the guys don't know. I doubt that anything gets by those guys without them not knowing.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I sat in the manager's office and he laid out what was going to happen. And pretty much everything that he laid out didn't happen. It happened in a completely different manner. And I was just like, you know what? I love these guys, but I'm not a fucking doormat.
No.
So I did what I had to do.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that kind of bugged me. Like, I felt there were some of my vocals on the record, and it was weird. But if you look at the record,
oh, like I did. So I know exactly where you're going with this.
I was like, okay, I know how much guitar I played.
Mm-hmm.
I know how many songs I co-wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And I know my voice when I hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of my guitar parts, a lot of my vocals, and I felt like I didn't get as much credit as I should have for the songwriting as well.
Right. Because I'm the guy that I'll buy the CD and I'll read the shit cover to cover. I'm all about, you know, that's how I feel about albums, all albums, you know? And when I'm listening to it and I'm reading the credits and I'm like, something's not correct here. You know what I mean? And just as, again, somebody who didn't even throw on headphones because, you know, you get a little deeper when you have the headphones on and stuff like that, you know, I heard what I heard and I was like, shit is going to get interesting. You know? And I
didn't want it to be, but there was a little exchange, a verbal exchange between my manager and their manager, and he called me and he told me what was said, and I just said, you know what, fuck that. I'm not anybody's doormat. And if this guy thinks that he can piss on me and walk away from it and I'll just bathe it, it's not going to happen. So I kind of pushed back.
I went through a similar situation in my own right with the company that I worked for, so I could relate, you know. So and that's why I wanted to ask you about it. I don't want to open old wounds, or whatever the case may be. But I feel.
And I've had a lot of people give me shit. They're like, dude, those fucking guys treated you great. How could you? And I'm like, listen. At the end of the day, they treated me great on the first record, and they treated me great on the second record. But I was just told what I was told. Not by Nikki, not by Tommy, not by Mick, the manager. And I just assume that the manager is their voice, and nothing happened to what they said it was going to happen.
They made business decisions, and honestly, the way it boiled down to it, because they didn't give a fuck what happened, you know, as long as their business decisions were made the right way. And I'm not even specifically speaking about the band, I'm talking about everybody else that surrounds it. It's a huge fucking machine.
Right.
You know, and I understand to a degree, but again, like you said, you're not a doormat. You know, and honestly, John, you're a fucking talented guy, and you know, people Monday morning quarterback shit all the time. So they can say anything to you you want to, but they weren't there to live it. They weren't on a day-by-day basis. They weren't getting the phone calls and all the bullshit. They surrounded.
Well, and that's what I tell everybody. I go, you know what? People ask me, like, you know, I didn't like it when you were singing in the band. I'm like, that's fine. I get that. I'm a huge Aerosmith fan. If Aerosmith decided to get a new singer, which they were considering doing a few years ago.
It's close.
I could not. I was like, how could they fucking do that? That's bullshit. Blah, blah, blah. And then this light bulb went off, and I'm like, oh, I've kind of lived this before. You know what I mean? I get it.
Yeah.
Now I know why they were pissed. But I had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
So don't be an asshole to me. I wasn't the fucking chick that came in and made the husband leave his wife.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that whole Vince Motley thing happened days and weeks before I ever got a phone call.
Right.
And I dare anybody to fucking do anything different than I did.
I'll put it to you like this.
And I dare anybody to do anything different. You know, after being in the band for 6 years and doing what we did, and then I moved into a nicer house, which was great. I thank Motley for that. But I also had more bills than I had before I joined Motley. I had an ex-wife, I had 2 kids, I had a bigger house, there was insurances, there was better schools, there was all this shit. And it was like, okay, we're getting Vince back. I understand that.
Right.
But the manager promised me certain things and they didn't come through. And I'm like, you can't fucking hang me out to dry like this. I'm not gonna, what else? Right. I don't want to sound like a bitch either, so.
No, I mean, you're totally not. And the point being is that, again, you know, there's all checks and balances, I guess. You know what I mean? If you're told one thing and you get another, you know, when you get the straight stiff one and you're fucking told a completely different story, you don't sound like a bitch. You sound like you're explaining your story. So that's the way that I see it anyway. You know, so anyway, you know, moving on from there.
And only because he asked.
Exactly.
Only because he asked.
Yeah.
I would have never touched this in a million years.
I totally twisted it on.
Personally, it's over with. I have an Italian saying, which I'm pretty sure is very prevalent in Long Island. It's La vida è come dovrebbe essere. Life is as it should be.
God bless.
God bless.
You know,
give us a.
I don't always say it the same way every time. I can't speak a lick of Italian, except for Abango.
Exactly. It's the same thing where I come from. Totally. All right, I will give you one last question. So I know you're looking to get out of here, and I appreciate you giving me your time. What does the future hold for John Corabi?
Well, I've actually graduated to night manager at the 7-Eleven that I'm working at.
All right, you take the 7-Elevens. I'm going to I'm taking the Wawa's.
It's Wawa here.
Beef jerky time.
You know what? We're doing this for a little bit. Meanwhile, we're all writing and getting ideas together. I have a bunch of ideas. Jeremy's been bringing some stuff. Topher's got some ideas.
Cool.
So next step is do this. Right now, we're just kind of doing weekends. We go home, and I want to start working on a full electric record with the band.
I can't wait to hear that. I'm really excited about that.
It's weird. I don't think it's going to be as heavy as the Motley stuff.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter.
But I'm very eclectic in my music taste, so it's gonna kind of be all over the place. There's gonna be some acoustic stuff. There's gonna be heavy stuff, but there's some really cool poppy, Beatlesque, Queen. You know, it's gonna be all over the place. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think with some of the songs that I've written already, it's very, very different than anything I think I've done before. So that's
awesome.
my opinion.
And that's the direction that I heard you taking with the Union records and stuff like that. Like I could hear a little more of like the Cheap Trick, the 70s stuff. That was a little more prevalent in that band. Because I saw where Bruce was coming from too.
That's what I grew up listening to, and that's like, I don't want to sound weird, but like, you know, all these bands were like, oh, the 80s were awesome and the 90s were awesome. To me, the greatest 10 or 15 years of music was from when the Beatles did Revolver to 1980. So from like 66 to like 1979, 80 it was so eclectic and like just such great shit. Bowie and Zeppelin and you could go see somebody like Aerosmith with a guy like Rory Gallagher.
Completely out of the blue.
It was like these really weird random mixes of genres of music. You were just there to smoke a little weed and watch a cool show and have fun. And so when everybody talks about the 80s, how awesome it was, and the 90s, how awesome it was, like, to me, like, why listen to some, and I'm not taking a piss out of anybody's, like, this may be the wrong way to say this, but instead of listening to a watered-down version of, I just go to the source.
Sure, of course.
Jellyfish, an amazing band, love that band. Okay. But if you really want to hear Jellyfish, I mean, and I'm not saying they're watered down, they were brilliant. But I'll go back and I'll listen to the Beatles and Queen.
Right.
That's where they got their, to me, even bands like Soundgarden, who I love, is basically a combination of Sabbath and the Beatles somehow.
Fair enough.
They somehow merged all that shit in. Same with Alice in Chains. Really cool harmonies on these Zeppelin-y, Sabbath-y riffs.
Right.
So, do I like their music? Absolutely. I was in a band with Jerry Cantrell. I love the guy.
Nice.
I think he's fucking talented beyond belief.
He's amazing.
But I just, my iPod has got all the original shit.
And the beauty of those albums from the late 60s, early 70s, there's so many different colors and shades and everything like that. You could have a heavy immigrant type song thing,
And then follow it up with, song like Bron and Yours, I don't know how they say it. I forgot. I've had a couple drinks. You could do the immigrant song and then follow it up with an acoustic track.
Right.
It didn't matter. It was just, but it was a whole package. It was the artwork, and then, like you were saying, you open it up and you read all the credits and you look at it, who produced it, who mixed it, and where did they record it. And it was just a whole vibe. And so that's where I draw from. And I want to do, obviously, it's, 40 years later. There's technology is different, so it's going to sound a little different. But I draw from that, so it's a combination of what I grew up with what's happening now, recording-wise and equipment-wise, and whatever.
All right, listen, John, I'm going to let you go. I want to thank you very, very much for taking the time.
Sorry it took so long to do
problem.
this. It was, we were supposed to do this at 4 o'clock this afternoon. I didn't show up till 6, and here we are at 3 in the morning. Oh, wait, no, my watch.
No, it's like
It's 4 in the morning.
it's recorded.
Nice.
For. It's
4
all right.
On that note.
On that note.
Thank you so much, my man. Thank you, and I can't wait till you come back.